No, he doesn't. But let's actually put all the information on the table real quick, so I can show you why I don't think this is the case. And before you finish your comment about how I'm just wrong and ignoring the truth, I want you to actually hear me out to the end. Let's start with the introduction of his children. FNAF 3. Now, I know that it's not confirmed to be Michael we play as, but just to be safe, we'll say he is for a second. If William doesn't hate his children, why is he trying to kill Michael here? Before we get into details, I think Michael is probably the one kid he would hate in the series, if at all, given future events, so this doesn't need to be solved, but again, for argument's sake, we will. Funnily enough, there are a lot of options realistically why William would attack Mike without hating him. The first, most obvious, is his jump scare, which I know we rip on Foxy for his jump scare, but it's plausible that this is just William getting to him and not death. You could even correlate it to the suit's ability to just follow sound feed of voices, hence why he is forced to go towards the room an audio lure is used in. But I don't like this answer, so what's the next option? Well, no matter the timeline, it's pretty certain that Mike at this point would have been scooped, and assuming that either illusion discs don't exist, or they don't work on animatronics, Michael would just look like a walking, rotting corpse to William, which would explain why he never attempts to speak to Michael even though we know he can talk. He doesn't know it's him. I think you could come up with a few more options, such as William's ability to see at all, since he's a corpse and all, but we'd be here forever, so let's just move on to FNAF 4. The encyclopedia states that the gameplay of FNAF 4 is from the perspective of the crying child, so this is proof, right? Well, the encyclopedia is full of a bunch of misinformation, not to mention I've been working on an idea we'll discuss in a minute, so set crying child to the side for now. The logbook tells us Michael had these nightmares as well, which would explain the phone calls and the behavior patterns, so that means Michael was forced into the experiment, right? Well, sure, he could have, again, with the only kid he has a reason to hate thing, but I don't think this is the case either. These are Michael's nightmares, sure, but a mixture of his own experiences and the experiences of one of the experimented kids, mentioned in Dittophobia. After all, Michael was injected with Remnant, which, again, from the books, we know can influence your memories, making it seem like he was in the experiments. The only robots that weren't in these experiments were Fredbear and Nightmare, as I think Nightmare and the other shadow animatronics are agony beings created by William's wickedness, as Nightmare said himself. As for Fredbear, I think this is sort of Michael's equivalent to this, a monster of his own, created from guilt. He blames himself for killing his brother. But let's get back to the crying child with sister location, which the only time we've seen that plush is in FNAF 4, so it's not too far to assume they're the same ones, hence why the walkie-talkie is in its hands. William doesn't need to use the bear anymore. In the FNAF 4 room, we see plushies scattered throughout the house, and if they aren't housing illusion discs like I originally presumed, why are they there? Because they're the crying child's plushies, along with his toys. Sure, you could argue the missing head on Foxy, but you have to remember, gas was being leaked into the room. I doubt a head couldn't have been sewn back on or imagined to be there. Why would William be using his son's toys if he was still alive? After all, we see them in his room during the minigames, so maybe he just switched them out? Also, the keypad to reveal the cameras of this room, the entire experiment itself, what was that combo again? 1983. And if this is referring to Freddy's opening, why? What would Freddy's have to do with the experiments? Are we here to assume he killed the MCI and then kidnapped kids on top of that without being caught? And that would also imply Freddy's was built for the purpose of luring children away, which feels weird when we already have a location that was built for the same purpose, Circus Babies. The fun times were intentionally designed to lure, and based on the tubes and the gas in Sister Location, it sort of implies both of these ideas were developed at the same time, which brings us to the question of why build the fun times? Why does William need Remnant if he hates his children? For himself? As I said in the last video, he doesn't seem to care about his own life. William isn't an animatronic like the others. He's not bound to some barrier. At any time, he could just choose to leave the FNAF 3 Frights attraction, yet he chooses to stay. which you could argue is due to the lure mechanism, but then post-fire, how does William get to the FNAF 6 location in the first place if he was so cautious? And why go to the FNAF 6 location at all? Because the currently speculated location of FNAF 6 is Fredbear's, which we know is semi-connected to the bunker. You know, the one with all of his experiments and technology, and yet he chooses to go to the FNAF 6 location instead, knowing it was a trap. Getting back on topic, with immortality off the table, why does William need Remnant? The only reason I can think of is to put his family back together, like he promised. After all, the fun times are designed just like the Afton family. The experiment was to learn about agony and how it affects the creation of life. The reason the crying child's toys are there is because he's already dead, and why 1983 is the code. But what about Elizabeth? Well, actually listen to the way that she speaks. Daddy, why won't you let me see her? Didn't you make her just for me? At the very least, it doesn't seem like she thinks her dad hates her, and we'll get back to the biggest elephant about that situation later. Michael was asked by William to go down to the bunker to put his sister back together, and according to Michael, he accomplished that goal, hence, I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. Almost like William knew Ennard would use him to escape. So, doesn't that mean William sent Michael down there into a death trap? Not necessarily, because why does William choose to stop his main focus on the bunker and instead go back to Freddy's? Because he understands the science now. He knew Michael wouldn't die. That's why his lines in FNAF 6 never refer to him being surprised that Michael is still alive, but rather reassuring Michael he's still his father. I've been referencing FNAF 6 this whole time, but what about Midnight Motorist? For the sake of being safe again, let's assume it is about Michael. William says he'll regret it when he gets home, and again, it's possible he does hate Michael. I don't think he does, because, you know, he's drunk, and given he just killed Charlie, probably not in the best headspace. People can feel anger towards a person without hating them, but I definitely feel like this area is a bit of a stretch to say he didn't hate Michael at this point. But let's get back to the biggest issue with this idea to begin with. Why does William warn the crying child to stay away from Fredbear? Warn Elizabeth to stay away from Baby? This is kind of weird behavior for a man that hates his children, given, you know, they're perfectly usable souls, no different than any other child. Plus the idea he would convince Michael and crying child to grow apart. For what? Because he's a murderer? Because he's quirky? There's genuinely no good reason why he would act this way. Start all the experiments, etc. just cuz. And we're never told anything to suggest he'd have a reason to hate his other children, other than that one scene in the Silver Eyes trilogy of William smacking Elizabeth for bothering him while he was building Baby, which, again, smacking your kid doesn't represent you hating them, and given the way she behaves in the games, it's implied she's constantly bothering him to see Baby. This seems more like a trying to knock the sense into her to stay away and not a, I hate you, but get away from the robot that could kill you. Overall, looking at the game, there's not really anything suggesting he hated any of his kids except for Michael. But if you have any other evidence to suggest otherwise, let me know in the comments below, or join my Discord where you can talk to other theorists and members of the community about your findings. I have a lot of other videos to record and write, and assuming this is a part 2 to the Does Afton Need a Motive video, I need to write a part 3 that'll be going over a certain topic that a lot of people don't talk about, which is the events of the Save Them incident, because I feel like William didn't really have a motivation for it, and I want to look into why he did it. Why did he kill those children at the FNAF 2 location? But I also have assignments due, so I'll see you all in the next video. Mata ne!